We have lots of NHL news and rumors to talk about today, including some trade talk and changes regarding the Toronto Maple Leafs, as well as some other teams, including the Colorado Avalanche and a potential goaltending target. Lots of other news around the league, including an update on Valeri Nichushkin in Colorado. The NHL Award ceremony might be getting a significant change. The Panthers are working on extending Sam Bennett. Lots of other talk, including the Habs having a planned visit to go see Ivan Demidov. With the Leafs, there's lots of talk around whether or not Marner will return and some players that they may target as a replacement if they decide to go in a new direction. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Lots to talk about here today. All kinds of interesting updates tonight from Elliotte Friedman on the headline segment of Hockey Night in Canada, which we'll get to here in just a few moments' time. First up, some other news around the league. Today we want to acknowledge Tyler Myers, who's playing in game number 1,000 for his NHL career tonight. Of course, just the other night we saw Luke Schenn accomplish this long time, feat that takes a long time to get to as well. Myers has certainly had a very long, fairly successful career. He is now the 106th player in NHL history to reach that milestone. So obviously coming all the way back from his rookie season where he was named Rookie of the Year. Certainly had his ups and downs over his long career here, but to hit 1,000 games is something pretty special and something he should definitely be very proud of. Lots of other injury updates and roster moves around the league today as well. 3 with the Los Angeles Kings. Joel Edmondson's return. Of course, he was on a personal leave. He's returned to the team, is back on the roster. Phoenix Copley has been recalled, and Darcy Kemper has been moved to injured reserve. So Kemper is now officially on IR. Of course, he was out before, but it wasn't officially moved to IR, which is now the case. So he has to miss at least 7 days. In St. Louis, Alexei Toropchenko has got a lower body injuries considered day-to-day, so he'll be out for a little bit. Nick Leddy, also with a lower body injury, is out as well. He may return sometime next week. In Pittsburgh, as we've been talking about in recent days, we could have a interesting goaltending situation on our hands. Alex Nedeljkovic has been recalled from the American Hockey League after completing his conditioning stint since he came back from injury here recently. So with Nedeljkovic back and healthy, and then of course you have Joel Blomqvist and the struggling, much higher paid Tristan Jarry. Be curious to see how the Penguins and Dubas navigate this situation. I don't know if they're going to be able to move Tristan Jarry. They tried in the offseason. There wasn't really much interest. And of course now you throw in some, not so good games, bad stats. It's going to be really tough to do. So I wonder if they will consider putting him on waivers at some point. I don't know. But be curious to see how the Penguins navigate that 3 goaltending situation. In Columbus, of course, we talked about Kent Johnston being the latest of his injury affected players in Columbus. The list just continues to grow. Of course, we know that Boone Jenner, of course, was the first one to suffer a significant injury. Then it was Eric Branson, and now Kent Johnston. And Johnston's also confirmed to be out long-term as well. Like, they just can't seem to catch a break there in Columbus. Some other positive news around the NHL. In Colorado, Valeri Nichushkin has returned to North America, back in Denver with the Avalanche. He's allowed to rejoin the team, but he's not going to be practicing with them directly. He's now permitted to work out and skate, but he has to do that on his own. Of course, he's still technically suspended, still part of the Stage 3 NHL Player Assistance Program, but at least he's able to take this next step in his return. Of course, he's now still not able to return for another, I think it's like 3 weeks. It's in early November when his date that he's allowed to return. So we'll see. As long as everything continues to go well for him here in the next couple of weeks, he can continue to skate and train. And then the next step will be to transition him to practicing with the team. And then if all continues to go well, be allowed to be reinstated and rejoin the team. Obviously, the Avalanche have had their share of struggles. They got their first win last night in overtime, and they could use a much needed boost from getting a guy like him back. Obviously, they still got a ways to go before that can happen, and they certainly need to find their way. Otherwise, it could get late early, as they say, for some of these teams. You can't struggle too bad out of the gate. You can't win the Stanley Cup in October or November, but you can certainly lose your right to play for it in the spring if you have a terrible, terrible start. And the Avalanche are one of the teams, like Edmonton, who they might not have had a great start, but they are one of the teams that are built with enough offensive firepower that they have the ability to go on a bit of a run and get themselves caught up, and that might be something that we might need to see here in the near future. We are going to talk a little bit more about the Avalanche and some options they might be looking at here in just a few minutes as well. Elliotte Friedman talked tonight about the NHL Awards being something that's under serious consideration for significant change. Of course, as we've talked about, and a lot of people kind of, when we get to like June, there's a lot that comes at us very quickly in the NHL offseason, and it's a lot very quickly when it comes to the NHL teams and having to be at all these events and be ready for all these dates. It can be a lot, and from a fan perspective, it's, it can be a lot as well, but I know for us it's different. But at the same time, like the NHL awards ceremony has been anything really short of entertaining. I personally have not. I mean, I usually watch it because I want to know who wins the awards, but they usually have some kind of terrible comedian making bad jokes. And it's just, I just don't, generally speaking, a high percentage of it is just not funny, not entertaining. And I think they're looking to kind of change things up here. But it's not even so much that's the reason. It's just that you get a lot coming at you in a short period of time between the awards, the draft, and free agency, usually all within like a week to 10 days. It's a lot. So Elliott's saying that they're looking at changing the format of the NHL Awards, trying to, they might not even have an official, like, actual ceremony. They're trying to figure out a way to kind of make it more fun, more interesting, trying to create viral moments. And they might go to the direction. One of the things they're looking at is perhaps like we see in the NBA, where when an award is being given to a player, they might be able to bring it to their arena. Of course, this is for guys that are in the playoffs, of course. So it's depending on who wins, they may not be able to do this all the time. But like if they're playing in the playoffs, they could show up and do like a presentation before the game or something like that. Or even just depending on who wins the awards, maybe it's more of a surprising the player at a different location or something. Just trying to create a buzz and some virality around getting more eyes on the game and getting more clips that are going to be, potentially going viral through social media and all that, and going with a whole different format. But for me, I'm all for it, to be honest. Like I said, I think the existing format has been stale, not entertaining, not funny, and we don't really need like a comedian up there making stupid jokes. We need to get to the point and just make it, you can try to create fun in different ways. And it's the award show, I'm sure, has been lacking when it comes to the actual ratings and all that as well. So we're going to likely see a completely different way of doing NHL awards sometime as early as the next award show next summer. Now, the Florida Panthers, of course, we know, after winning the Stanley Cup, raising their banner, they got Carter Verhaeghe early this season, locked up to a long-term deal, and now their attention turns to Sam Bennett. A lot of teams, according to Elliotte Friedman, are really watching this situation closely because Sam Bennett has been a terrific player for Florida, plays a very vital role as their number 2 center. And if for some reason he can't come to terms and hits the market in free agency, he's going to be a highly sought-after player. So, like I said, a lot of teams watching this extremely close. At this point, though, it's believed that there is an opportunity for Florida and Bennett to reach a deal. Clearly, after signing Verhaeghe, they still have Aaron Ekblad in the same situation as well. It's going to be tough for them to keep everybody and keep this whole kind of band together. They obviously lost a lot of players in the last offseason, and that could continue a little bit this offseason depending on how things go. But, certainly, I think, these players that are there and part of that core, between the no state tax advantage and the fact that they love playing where they are, not only from a work player perspective, but like for a personal life, be able to live in South Florida on the beach and have a great job like that. If they really want to stay, they probably will take less. Like the deal they got for Verhaeghe was a phenomenal deal. This guy could have come in at so much more money on the open market, but he just had no desire to leave that situation. He's had so much success there. Why would you want to leave? Like I said, it's not just about the game. It's about the personal lifestyle that comes with it. It's a very attractive, right? So when you factor that in, like I said, Friedman believes that there is a path to get Bennett signed. No real rumors yet on what the numbers are looking like, Certainly, he can command a good amount of money based on how he plays. I don't think he's going to be as big of a number as you're going to see like with Verhaeghe or with, even guys like Kachuk and Barkov. He's not going to be to that level. He's a super important piece of them, but, it's usually more of the goals and the points that usually get you the bigger money. And as much as he's, like I said, very important, plays a vital role, he's not quite as big of a point producer as those guys. I wonder if they might be able to get him. This is just a guess on my part. Maybe in the 6.5 range. We'll see. I don't know. But like I said, lots of teams watching that closely because if he becomes available, he's probably going to be able to make a lot more money on the open market if you really want it to cash in. But, the no state tax will play a role in the lifestyle, and this depends on how important that is to him compared to, what else might be out there. Now, another situation you're going to watch for a young player, maybe getting another long-term deal. Now that the Dallas Stars have Jake Ottinger signed, their attention now turns to a player like Wyatt Johnston, who's been phenomenal for them in the first few years of his young NHL career. Now, pending RFA, who's eligible to sign a contract extension. The belief is, if you look around their team, between Ottinger, Heiskanen, and Rupe Hintz, and all the younger players on this team that are kind of locking in long term, they all have term now. And, a lot of them are in that $8 million range. And he, to be honest, has been productive enough and projects to continue improving enough that he's certainly justified to ask for a very similar type of money. So like Friedman on his podcast was talking about, maybe something in that 8x8 range might be, something that we could expect. Hard to say how close things are right now, but like Florida, now that the other contracts are done, that's where their attention span is at right now. So hard to say the exact kind of timelines we're looking at, but it's in the works, and we'll see where things go from there. I'm sure Dallas will get Johnston done, just a matter of exactly when and how much. That's the only question. Now in Montreal, I know one big thing that's been somewhat frustrating for a lot of Habs fans, especially if you're following along and follow their prospects closely. There seems to have been a decent amount of frustration within the fan base for what they're seeing over in Russia and top prospect Ivan Demidov, obviously, taken, with a really high pick in the top of the first round last year. Demidov projects to be a really, really good player and could join the Habs as early as next year, maybe even at the end of this year, depending on exactly when his KHL season is finished. It is possible he could sign his ELC and maybe join the Canadiens at the end of the year for a few games. That's difficult to say 100%. That may or may not be possible. Obviously, for Montreal, it'll depend on where they sit in the standings and if playoffs are an option or any of that. So hard to say, right? But no matter what, I think next year in the regular season, as it stands right now, we expect Demidov to be signed and in the Habs organization. But over in Russia, he's had his moments where he's looked really good and had some highlight reel plays. But then we're also seeing a lot of time where his ice time is down. He's either playing as the 13th forward or he's out of the lineup or just not getting a lot of playing time. There's been a lot of frustration about how he's being used and handled. And according to Friedman's report tonight on Saturday Headlines, there is a planned visit from the Canadiens brass and management to go over to Russia and to see Demidov and to kind of talk to his Russian counterparts on his development. Now, this is not something that's come up because of that frustration. And we've heard comments from Jeff Gorton before, didn't really say a whole lot, but just saying that, it's something that they're monitoring. Unfortunately, they don't have a lot of control over, and just kind of left it at that, trying to be diplomatic. But, clearly I'm sure they'd like to see things being handled differently. I don't think there's any doubt there, but this is something that's been planned for a while that came together not long after the draft. So it's not like they're going over because they're upset and frustrated and trying to get some changes made. That's not what this is about. Although, maybe they'll have some chats and maybe see if they can work something out. But some people believe the fact that Demidov so far has not shown any interest to re-sign and extend over there, that maybe they're kind of, looking at things while saying, well, if you're not going to stick around, then we're not going to invest a lot of time into your role with the team and then your ice time and development and all that. I know we've heard a lot of comments from the coach saying before that, he'll go to the NHL when he's ready, and like whether or not he was going to be first line or fourth line or what his role was going to be with the club. They certainly have a different way of going about things over there for sure. And I've seen young players. We saw it with Michkov last year before he came to Philly. I understand why some of these players might not be real keen to stay over there, because if they don't want to stay and they make that known early, they don't seem to be treated the best. That just seems to be what it looks like from an outsider, or looking in from the outside. So we'll see what happens, but be curious to see if anything comes from that planned visit of the Habs brass to go over and see Demidov here coming up sometime soon. Now, when it comes to some trade talk as well, Elliotte Friedman was talking about some goaltending options in Colorado, and he mentioned on his podcast that came out yesterday that the Avalanche, as well as other teams, the teams that are looking for goaltending right now, he expects Sharks goaltender Mackenzie Blackwood to be getting a lot of attention. Obviously, somebody who's had a starting role in the past. Obviously, somebody who's on a team that's not expected to be anywhere near the playoffs. It's very possible, very likely, good chance that the Sharks do trade Blackwood sometime during the season. Of course, we know that the San Jose Sharks have Yaroslav Askarov kind of waiting in the wings, saw his opportunity to get to the NHL very quickly, and they did obviously assign him to the minor leagues to start the year, which I know raised a lot of eyebrows and caught a lot of people by attention. But at the same time, like I've said before, I don't think he was completely opposed to doing that. It wasn't going to really rattle anybody's feathers here, because in Nashville it was a completely different story. He knew if he went to the AHL that there was no hope in sight for him to make a way to the NHL in the short term and stay between the other goalies that they had under contract. San Jose does not have that. They don't have anybody signed long term, and it was pretty obvious to me that even if he does play in the minors some this year, but before the end of the season, I suspect he'll be there and be in San Jose full time. I really do. He'll either outplay these guys or one of them's going to get traded, and Blackwood, according to Friedman's, already generating some attention. So looking to Colorado as a prime destination. Obviously, Georgiev has struggled. The team has struggled, and they certainly need to explore their options, which he mentions that they're certainly looking at. But again, they're trying to be patient, trying to see how things go. They have a lot of uncertainty and money tied up in players that they don't know the exact timelines here. But Nichushkin's part of that. They have obviously a bit better handle on that. But he still has milestones to hit and goals to go through with this program. And even though there's a date that's there, what if he could have a setback? He may not be released. Like, he still has to go through a reinstatement process. It's not 100% foolproof. So at the end of the day, they have to be cognizant of that. So clearly, the goaltending has been a problem. They picked up Kakinen from the Jets on waivers, who is now able to join the team. I think he had to go through some work visa and stuff issues, changing countries, of course, between Canada and the United States. So it took a little bit, but he's able to join now. And then we'll see what happens between now and the next little while. And of course, we talked yesterday about John Gibson being mentioned by other insiders. Friedman also mentioned him on his podcast as well as being somebody that might be of interest. Certainly Gibson's down to 2 years on his contract. And as much as his numbers haven't been the most flattering, he is a good goaltender with a good history and playing on a weaker team and has been for some time. But if you take a look at Lucas Dostal, he's been able to outplay him and stuff, and if he can do it, why can't Gibson? So, but Gibson and Blackwood are both names to certainly watch as far as the Avalanche and other teams that are really looking for goaltending help are looking for. Now, the other thing I want to take a look at today is Nick Kypreos went on to talk about Mitch Marner. He mentions three big names to keep an eye out for, that if the Leafs decide that they don't want to bring Marner back, three names that would be potentially hitting free agency next summer that they could target as sort of a Marner replacement, or at least a big step in kind of reshaping the team. Obviously, these names are not even guaranteed to hit the market. They could re-sign with their existing clubs. One of them we already talked about in Sam Bennett. Of course, Sam Bennett is an Ontario kid, grew up in the Toronto area, great friends with Connor McDavid. Him and McDavid were great buddies and longtime minor hockey teammates. So would Bennett consider a hometown reunion? If he doesn't sign with Florida, I suspect it would be a possibility. Bennett would be, a great player to throw in that middle part of the ice. They've played lots against him in the playoffs and regular season. They know how tough he is to play against and how much of a pain in your side he can be. Somebody you hate to play against, but you love having on your team. So, would he be a Mitch Marner replacement? Not really, in the sense that he's not going to give you the same kind of production, the same kind of offense, but he's going to give you a completely different style. And would he be a player that they could afford to sign if Marner wasn't there? Absolutely. Now, he also mentions Brad Marchand, of course, the Bruins captain, who's also a pending UFA. I don't see that one having any chance of happening. After all the battles that the Bruins and the Leafs have had, that would be kind of weird to see with Marchand being on the Leafs, although he does need a new contract. And at the end of the day, though, he's played his entire career with Boston. He's kind of in a similar spot that we saw, Krejci and Bergeron, those guys. I'm not sure how long Marchand intends to play. He's battled a ton of injuries the past couple of years. I think it's fair to say that they've taken their toll. He's still a really good player, but maybe not quite the level he was a few years ago. But at the end of the day, he's still somebody you don't really want to have to battle with in the playoffs and all that. So if Brad Marchand does hit free agency, he'll definitely have tons of options. There's no doubt about it. I think he's at a stage of his career, though, where he's not going to be anywhere nearly as expensive. And again, like Bennett, would it make sense for the Leafs to target him if he's available? And if they don't bring back guys like Marner or Tavares? Sure. But at the same time, you're not going to get anywhere near that level of production. It's just that simple. The other biggest name that would probably have the main opportunity to be productive and give you similar numbers, maybe even better, would be Avalanche forward Mikko Rantanen. Now, Rantanen might turn out to be just as expensive, maybe even more so than Mitch Marner. Mikko Rantanen right now has been a very productive player for the Avalanche. And somebody that, right now the belief is internally that the Avalanche may not want to go above the $12.6 million of Nathan MacKinnon. That's how much money Rantanen is possibly looking for. I mean, if you look at how his contracts have gone and how he's at times been neck and neck with MacKinnon when they were younger. There was even a stretch where he was kind of outperforming him. Obviously, MacKinnon's really taken off since then. But there's a lot of arguments you can make that he may not be quite as valuable to the team as MacKinnon, but he's right there. He's right there. He's very productive. He's had some big seasons. For him to get 90 to 100 points, not crazy or unusual. Same level of production as Marner, except he's a much bigger body, plays a different style of game. He would be somebody you wouldn't really save money on Rantanen, but you would get a similar level of production with a different style. Whereas Marchand and Bennett, you're going to get smaller, pain-in-the-butt players that are still productive and important to your team. No offense to Marchand, but why would you take on a player to replace Mitch Marner that's almost at the end of their career? Marchand probably has a few years left in him, but he's going to be in his later 30s. That doesn't make any sense. Bennett would make him a lot more sense to target, but again, not the same kind of player. You might be able to, with the money that they would end up having to pay to Marner if they choose not to go down that road, they could go after Bennett and somebody else, right? So, but again, are you going to have that same production? Like it's a real slippery slope here. Like I said before, lots of tough questions asked. Do you bring Marner back? Do you not? Do you consider trading his signing rights, or does he just completely walk as a UFA? Like, what direction does this go? This is really, really complicated, and the Leafs have to tread very, very carefully here because, like I said before, it's really hard to imagine them, like, you're not going to win any trade. I don't see how you can trade Marner and win the deal. It's just not possible. But as a free agent, some of these other guys, like if you could get Rantanen, he's won the Stanley Cup. He's just as productive. That might be the only player that's out there that might be worth doing it for. So let me know what you think. Obviously, we know that. And the other thing, too, is Mitch Marner has trained a lot. And like this summer, he spent some time with Crosby and MacKinnon. And we know they're quite fond of him. And McKinnon's talked a lot about Marner and how much crap he gets in Toronto and it's not justified. And you're probably going to get a push from MacKinnon to make sure Marner's on Team Canada. Could we, with a Rantanen Marner swap, would that even make sense? I wouldn't be completely crazy to think that, to be completely honest. To have Marner go play with MacKinnon and Rantanen go to Toronto, I don't think it's that crazy myself. But let me know what you think down in the comments below, if that's something that is remotely close to happening or not. I mean, it might be a case where both player goes as free agents, or they could end up trading for each other. Signing rights, hard to say. Or it could be a sign and trade, so they make sure they get the 8 years as well. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.